Hey guys, Bitcoin Owen here. I was listening to a podcast this afternoon. It was by a macro expert basically, and she went through on Green Candle Investments podcast, and she went through every conceivable possibility for the US government to get out of its debt situation. Basically, the US government is running a deficit of over $2 trillion per year, and it's rising, it's increasing. And this lady went through every possibility. She said one possibility that she spent the most time deliberating on was increasing the retirement age for Social Security, basically, from 67 to 70. She said that would result in a net saving of $130 billion per annum, per year, the same thing. 130 billion. That was the only possibility. There was no other real possibility of getting the deficit under control, basically, other than that. But that would only result in a saving of $130 billion a year, and the deficit is 2,000 billion, $2 trillion per year. So she covered every possibility apart from this. It's the money, basically. The US dollar is just fiat, basically, and this is what happens to fiat currencies. Governments get into financial difficulty. And the US has been unusual, basically, because it's taken so long. They've had this fiat dollar basically for over 100 years in America, and they've gotten this far by pulling every string in the book, basically, to stretch it out this far. But I can't see them stretching it any further, basically. There are no real possibilities other than to change the money to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the way out for the US government, and Trump knows this, basically. Trump is trying to cut with his that cutting, basically, using Elon Musk's Doge, Department of Government Efficiency, and he's trying to cut using Doge and using artificial intelligence, basically get people to reply you in 5 bullet points why their job is necessary, basically, to justify their job with the US federal government. The states in America don't borrow, basically. It's just the US federal government that borrows. The states balance their budgets, basically, and they don't turn to the federal government for a bailout. So this is the only hope now that America has, is Bitcoin. Basically, Bitcoin is America's only hope. They're having to turn to the Federal Reserve, basically, to buy their bonds. So when the US federal government runs a deficit, they have to issue bonds to cover that deficit. And the Chinese have stopped buying. Tether is buying. They're the 7th largest buyer of US debt at the moment. But they have to borrow $2 trillion every year to meet to cover the deficit of $2 trillion. And last year there was a shortage of buyers. International buyers, the Japanese and the Chinese, said no, we have enough US debt on our books and we don't want any more. So they turned to, the only option was the Federal Reserve. So where did the Federal Reserve get the money to buy all those US bonds? They printed it, basically. They created it from thin air because the US federal government has that right to create money from thin air. So they printed it, and this resulted in inflation, basically. But the real answer would be Bitcoin, to move from the dollar to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin cannot be created from thin air, and Bitcoin, the purchasing power of Bitcoin increases every year, whereas the purchasing power of the dollar decreases. And that's because Bitcoin cannot be printed from thin air. It cannot be created from nothing. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So that's why Bitcoin is the answer. Bitcoin is the way out of this pickle that the US government finds itself in. The up return issue has been quiet for the last few days. They tend to take the weekend off, these people. So up return has been off the table. Must have a look at Delving Bitcoin lately. Another website where there are interesting technical debates and discussions on Bitcoin is in delvingbitcoin.org. DELVING. delvingbitcoin.org. So you have Bitcoin Optech, you have the Bitcoin Dev mailing list, you have TLDR, you have the pull requests and issues on GitHub, and you have Delving Bitcoin. There are 5 sources: Delving Bitcoin, Bitcoin Optech, podcast and newsletter, GitHub, Bitcoin Dev mailing list, and one more. There's 5 different sources of technical information on Bitcoin. That's all for now, folks.